Right, and it's time to get into our discussion now this morning. You all heard about that story that says that dying in Kiambu County is going to be a very costly affair if a proposed law indeed becomes law, if proposals are passed by the county assembly. And I just want to quickly take you through some of those figures. And conduct a burial in your own soil in Kiambu County for an adult, you'll have to fork out, the family of course of an adult who's died in Kiambu County will fork out 4,500 shillings, 3,000 for a child, and 2,500 for an infant. And then families whose relatives die and are buried in cemeteries within the county, they will pay 8,000 shillings for a permanent grave, while those whose loved ones die in other counties but are buried in Kiambu, they will pay 10,000 shillings. And if you're not a non-resident of Kiambu County, it's 25,000 shillings. And also for maintenance of work on the grave, the cemetery, that is a whopping 30,000 shillings. So these are figures that, of course, a lot of people have been very uncomfortable with. They have been criticized. Some of the locals have said that those figures are exorbitant and that they are asking the county assembly not to approve those. But we're asking you now a question of the day. What are your thoughts? And do you support the proposed burial fees? I've just highlighted some of those fees and how they are, and what are your thoughts? Do you support those proposed burial fees? The county government says that it is to help, of course, fund their budget. And now joining me in studio is two members of that government. One of them, in my extreme left, is the Deputy Governor of Kiambu County, Gerald Githinji.
Good morning.
Thank you for making time for us, sir. And also Patrick Chege, he's a member of the County Assembly representing Gitodhua Ward in Kiambu County. Thank you both for making time for us. And I'll just begin with what informed this bill when you came up with this and these proposals. And of course I know there is so much more, just that this one has really been talked about. We've not heard of this kind of a law before, this kind of figures when you're talking about burials and in terms of taxing that. So what informed this? How did you reach this, Mr. Deputy Governor?
First of all, I'd like to thank all the members of the public who participated in contributing to this finance bill.
Right.
We had some public participation events on the 20th and 21st of August, and we had very good representation. In terms of this bill, the way you have presented it is not accurate.
Okay.
There's nobody who is going to be charged for burying anybody in their private property. Okay. In either your farm or anywhere which is private. The only charges are for public land. Okay. No, public cemetery. And public county cemeteries are places where need maintenance and that land needs buying.
Right.
As we speak, therefore, the way it has been presented, nobody is going to be charged for burying.
For their own land.
For their own land.
All right. So you said there's been some form of public participation, but who initiated this? At what point did this proposal, where did it come from?
The proposal that people who are buried in a public cemetery get charged.
Yes.
It's always been there.
Okay.
What we have done is consolidated what was in 8 different councils into one bill that will be representing the whole of Kiambu County.
Right.
So we are not creating anything new. We have therefore not added anything that was not there in the previous county councils.
All right, I'll come to you. Yeah. I'm seeing you shaking your head. He says there's nothing new that's being introduced. It's always been there. And you say no. Why?
I say no, Sophie. If you look at this document, something that is written never changes. And we have fees for graves. And if you look right there, we have cemetery. In a dictionary, what do you mean by cemetery? It is land that is set aside for burial. It can either be public or private. And the person who authored this, who are the executive, him in charge and the governor and the executive member, they have specified cemetery, adults 4,500, children 3,000, and infants 2,500. And they have clearly stated below there what is chargeable for county cemetery. Fee for county cemetery, meaning the author of this thing knows that there are county cemeteries that are for public, and he has specified, but above there it is not specified. It is written cemetery. That is supposed to mean public or private. So the charges they are levying, as per now, what is written in law, there is no chance for ambiguity. We are going to be charged for burying the dead on our land. On our land. So you've started by clarifying it's not the case, but why is that separation is talking about? Why not have those figures under the county cemeteries?
I'd like first of all to clarify that this is not a law yet. This is a process where a document has been taken to the county assembly so that they can be able to ask questions that are not clear and therefore get clarified before it becomes an act. That it is not a law yet, and that is not what is in discussion. It is the proposal which we are now discussing. So for these fees, what is meant, for below there it says permanent graves. Above here, there are graves that are not permanent, where people are buried and then that grave is reused after many, many years. And that's what this first charge is. Permanent graves are the ones that have got a stone building around the grave.
So this is not straightforward to the people.
So are you saying that according to this and how it's written out, let me just have a look, because he's just read out some of those segments, and under here there's fees for county cemetery, and there are those figures, but here fees for graves.
That is
so a grave in my
that's land. Fees for grave in a cemetery. It says cemetery. It says cemetery there.
For example, what is the meaning of the word cemetery?
It says cemetery there. In that is this. Let me first of all explain one thing. The county only charges 2 taxes, and a tax is where you're being paid without any activity for government.
Right.
These are fees. Fees are fees for a service. There's no service provided by the county when you bury somebody in your farm.
Land, right.
So there's no fees that we can charge, and we are only charging fees. So these fees are for burying in a county cemetery.
Okay, but the question which perhaps we need you to answer, and he's asking, I've not had you respond to, these two have been differentiated. There are 2 categories. I understand what you're saying, that you charge for, of course, those who bury in cemeteries that are owned by the counties. And it's written here, fees for county cemetery, and there are those numbers and what you're charging. But why is there a difference between those numbers and a different category here? You have fees for graves. Which graves?
For non-permanent graves in a cemetery.
Which cemeteries if they're not owned by?
That is the county cemetery. That's for county cemetery. So if there's this misunderstanding, I'd like to clarify that is for county cemetery.
So are you saying this category then should not be here?
That category is there for non-permanent graves.
That are where?
In the county cemetery.
So these are for the permanent
graves in the county cemetery.
But that is not outlined.
It is not specified.
It's not specified.
It is specified before.
And therefore,
you don't leave those loopholes in law. It can never happen on earth.
The reason that we have a county assembly is so that they can debate and ask what clarity, where there's need for clarity in the law. And there are lots of documents which are written and they're further clarified. This is an area where there's need for clarity, and we have clarified that as the question came. The people who drafted will do a lot of work, and they do it under very tight deadlines. So they may have missed that, and we have identified it, and we've said we'll clarify it.
So it will be rectified. That's what the word you're giving?
That is the work of the county assembly. They are going to look at it, and after debating with the people who prepared it, our Minister for Finance in the county, then it will be clarified.
All right. So is your only concern and issue, was it that misunderstanding in terms of the lack of clarity on whether if indeed you bury somebody in your own land, you're also being charged, and that in terms of just the charges, if that is clarified, you're fine with it as a county assembly member?
We are not fine with even the charges, although you have seen from him, you can't tell a person who is lying by the look of the eye. You have seen this law, it is here, it is very clear, it is not us who has drafted as the county assembly, though we will rectify it, but it was an intended purpose for burials at homes of people. They have to apologize as an office to the people of Kiambu and admit it is wrong for politicians to cheat something that is written. It is here on black and white.
Okay.
It is
so
written.
He has clarified that, and he said that of course now comes to your door, and you as a county assembly will deliberate on it, clearly pointing out those loopholes, and so you can do that amendment and change and make that language clearer so that the ordinary Mwananchi in Kiambu County has an understanding that it's not when you bury somebody in your own land, because that is what has been the story. That's what most people have understood. So that given, are you now in support? Do you agree with these charges that they should be as they are?
I don't agree with the charges because they are quite high. Look at the living standards of the people of Kiambu. Go to somewhere like Ndeya, Katwanyaga, some parts of Githunguri. It is very expensive, the charges they are levying to the people of Kiambu County. The law requires that you have public participation.
Right.
And the public participation does not mean calling your friends and then saying you have public participation. You do that through advertisements. You do that through writing memos, through posters, so that you inform the public, so they make this decision. If you ask most of the people from Kiambu, they don't know about the law. There was no public participation from the side of the executive. And the people of Kiambu are not in support. You have heard it is plain and white to the public that they were not involved. I don't know who they engaged as their public, because I know the people of Kiambu have not been consulted.
Okay.
I'll let you know, which you may not have known, that we made an ad, we put an ad in the newspaper. We also had meetings on the 20th and 21st.
So
I participated on the 20th in Thika, on the 21st in Githunguri, in a hall with over 50 people. And that is representative public participation. People were invited in the newspaper, and they did come. So if you didn't say...
Over 50 people in a county that has a population of how many?
No, not 50 people together. There was 12 different public participation activities. I did not participate in all of them. I went in two out of 12. And in those two, we had very good representation. Members of the county assembly should have attended. They were invited. They didn't. Some attended, some did not. So when we look at this is a process that we need to develop for Kiambu County and other counties, where the executive, we own this bill. It's ours. Where we create a bill, we take it to the county assembly, they look at it, they identify areas they would like to correct and they like to improve, and we discuss. He says that these charges are too high. We hear that. We have a tax target to achieve. If you look at the cemeteries now, because of the charges that we have in Kiambu, we have recently filled the cemetery in Limuru. We'll need to buy land. We cannot tell people that we'll not bury you because you don't have land and because the cemetery is full. We have put aside 100 million shillings to buy some extra land, which we are going to do. And in this process, we'll need to therefore have that funded by people. The county government does not have any money other than what comes from people. In future, people will need land for burying. So we will need to raise this money.
Okay. So Sophie, you cannot raise taxes on dead people.
This is not a tax.
There are better ways even to correct that revenue or that charge you propose to be. It's not a tax. There are better ways. Like in Kiambu right now, people owe the government of Kiambu in taxes arrears more than 21 billion shillings. If you brought a way that you can put some waivers, maybe like 20%, 30% waivers, to encourage the defaulters to pay, we will even have a surplus in our budget as the people of Kiambu. It is only getting the priorities right. There are things that you do not tax.
Okay, so there are those who have accused you.
We are not taxing death. There are charges for a burial. If you go to Langata Cemetery, you pay 25,000 to be buried in Langata Cemetery. That's what you pay. But
to respond to his question, there's money out there, lots of it, that if in fact you made some form of, subsidizing that, so to encourage people to come out and pay, why not seek other routes so that you're not increasing charges and perhaps hurting Mwananchi even more, whereas there's actually other avenues you could, get into?
We have processes where families that are not able to pay for this that are helped. We have processes like that, and we have money in the budget to help.
Can he give an incident that they have helped since they came in the county government, or any waiver they have done to a cemetery recently?
To a whole cemetery?
You have said you have ways that you have helped the needy before on waivers, and you are putting that in place. Is that in law? Do you have a law that you have proposed for such a thing to happen?
You have seen the budget, and it is there in the budget.
You cannot do that in a budget. You just do it under registration.
If you haven't seen it, then it's because you haven't read it. And this
this has been exploring other avenues to raise this funds.
Some people have complained about this budget without actually reading and understanding it. And I'm asking for understanding. When you understand it, whatever is in this budget is something that is clear.
Okay, but his question was on exploring other avenues to raise these funds on these defaulters. Why are we not hearing the county government, you as the deputy governor and the governor, coming out very strongly and saying there's this over 20 billion shillings that's lying out there, and this is the mechanism or route we're going to take to recover that money? Because it's a lot of money.
Because this bill does not look at recovering that money. That money is a different activity which is going on. This bill is looking at how do you charge for different fees and charges for the services provided.
You say it's going on how?
You said that the purpose for these charges, it is to maintain our budget in Kiambu because we have a deficit. So if we have a deficit, we are giving you proper ways and other avenues that we can have. Look at what is happened to Machakos. They have gone to China, they have brought in investors, they are getting money from donors and other counties. In Kiambu, we are not getting money from donors because we are chasing them away. We are getting all our priorities wrong. They have gone for several trips. We have not seen something yielding. Maybe in one of the trips, what they had collected from another country is only this finance bill that they managed to bring from another country.
I beg your pardon. I know you're getting emotional charged about this. Let's talk about what we are doing in Kiambu in terms of investors. We have an investor, and I can name them. They are going to put a factory worth over $100 million. And that investor, we're in the process of discussion. We can shout about it too early and get it wrong. So we have to go through the process before you get to know about it. I don't shout about things that are not yet complete. And we are working with other investors in Kiambu.
I want to get to the investor question because there's been quite a number of also allegations in regarding to what also the governor has uttered in public. But to take you back to the question of the burial fees, the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry Kiambu chapter has written to the assembly protesting the proposed fees, saying they are, quote, punitive and may negate the idea of spanning growth of business and social sectors in the county. The letter is dated 14th October and signed by the county organization chairman Samuel Warathen, says that residents who are even not involved or consulted on the matter. So I know you've said you had some sessions with the members of the public, some of them, but this is what the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, the Kiambu chapter, is saying on those proposals.
And what is said is the right thing, because the process is to have a bill, and when it is in front of the assembly, if there's anybody who would like to make a change, they write a memorandum to the assembly. So we are following a process. He has a memorandum that is put into the assembly. The assembly will discuss it. They'll also discuss with the finance minister and agree on the way forward.
Okay, so you're putting it right on the doorstep, front and center to the county assembly.
There's work to be done.
Yeah.
The executive have done their work. The assembly have work to do.
Right.
And the work that they do it in the assembly. If they come and do it in the press, they get they give information that may be wrong because it's not a complete document. The document becomes complete when the assembly has done their work.
Sophie,
you need to do your work.
Sophie, the document we are discussing is the proposal they have done. It is not what is in the county assembly. If they will do the amendments, we are not allowed to speak of the amendments that are in the county assembly. What is in the public domain? Let him not shy away. It is what they have proposed as the government of Kiambu executive, and that is what we are discussing, the content. You hear the investors have said clearly they have not been involved. That is true, Sophie. You look at the sectors that they are taxing. Go to Githunguri, Fresher. They are charging 1 shilling per liter of milk to the local mwananchi. 2% of your earning on coffee and tea. Look at what we'll do to the industry of coffee and tea, taxing them 2% without an agreement from the stakeholders. I don't know whether the Ungori farmers are willing to pay 1 shilling, and I'm sure they are not willing. I'm sure the coffee sector will not pay 2%. I'm sure the pineapple sector will not pay 2% of their earning to the county government. So they have gotten it all wrong on proposals. That is why there is an outcry on these sectors, because they are going to clear the sectors. Once you have a charge, that charge, if you tax 1 shilling from Remuru, the farmer is going to be deducted 1 shilling. So there's a problem with the sector and how they're approaching.
And also that farmers cultivating an acre of land will attract 2,000 tax?
That is, I remind you what we are doing.
Yeah.
We are charging for services that are rendered by the county.
Okay.
If somebody had a piece of land that they would like that the county to clear for them, they will be charged.
Right.
But if somebody has their piece of land and they are working on their piece of land, nobody will charge them.
Okay.
This is for services rendered by the county.
Let me take you to what we're talking
until
about.
we understand that basic foundation, then we are talking about the wrong thing. Because for county services, we charge. For people doing their own thing, we don't charge.
But Sophie, if you go to the law that is saying 2,000, they have not specified. They have only put land. If they leave it like that without specifying it is public land or land owned by the county government, you leave a loophole. And that's why we are saying this law has a lot of ambiguity on their proposals, what they have proposed.
Is that loophole?
There's no loophole. What I have explained is this is a process. The next step of the process is the county assembly will look at it. First of all, the finance committee is looking at it, and they're debating with the finance minister. They're going to look at it and create a document that we put in front of the assembly.
But is it clearly stipulated? Is it clearly outlined that, you know, there's that differentiation with public land and privately owned land?
The creator of the document is identifying areas where services are rendered by the county, they charge fees.
Okay.
The recipients have not understood that. It is important that we explain to them and make it very clear that this is for services rendered by the county.
Then you should put it on paper. But don't, the way you interpret it is your own, but it's not what in the document. You have to specify by writing, because I say there's no chance for ambiguity in any law. To Sophie, there's something...
And therefore your work is very well cut out.
So are you saying that you will leave loopholes because, you know, there are certain people who will come and fix those loopholes?
No.
Yeah.
What I've said, the person who wrote it knowing that this is for a fee charged by the county.
But wrote it knowing, but not putting it down for everybody else to know what he or she knows. Isn't that the question, that when it's written down, the clarity is not there? Whilst the intention may be noble...
This is not the final document.
And that is not in dispute. That is not in
dispute.
And that is where you have the process where you're creating the final document.
Okay. I will take you to the question of the investors, and a section of county assembly members have accused the governor of scaring away investors. You alluded to that, saying that he had stopped building plans. And what the governor is quoted to have said that our decision was arrived at after some farmers sold their plots to investors who put up real estate. We want to retain Kiambu as an agricultural county. Is that what has been happening in terms of building plans been halted because of that?
One of the things that's happening, Kiambu is is next to Nairobi, so it is developing very fast, and it's if you see what is happening in Githurai, you have stone buildings, but because the buildings have been put without proper planning, they're effectively growing into a slum. What we have done is said we are going to create a very well ordered and developed county. To do that, we need to have a special planning, which is planning for the whole of the county. And as buildings grow, they grow according to a plan. Thereby, you will have the services put in place at the right time. And that is the work. That's the reason there was a little bit of a stop of the change of user to ensure that this is achieved.
Sophie, on the issue, let me say it's unfortunate. These people are looking for taxes. Right now, if you go to our county, go to Juja, Thika, Ruiru, all those regions, we have plots that are 40 by 60 that were approved by the former councils. Right now, people have invested their money. You are not being given approval plans because they say that size is not okay. They need to be helping and to the solution, but not affecting the people who have contributed their money and bought those lands as early as 1992, but now they cannot get their plans from the county government. That, and they charge a fee for those plans, yet they want to tax the dead and stop the planning. So it is a bit unfair to the people
so
of
you'd
Kiambu.
said temporarily stopped those the building plans. Are they now being approved?
They will be approved as soon as we have the plans, which is in the next couple of months.
Okay, and you don't think that in itself is just a deterrent for investors? If I cannot come and, you know, my building plans are being stopped, and the reason being given in this particular case is to ensure that Kiambu is maintained as an agricultural county.
There's been a lot of ingress into the agricultural land.
Right.
That needs to be checked. It can only be checked when there's proper plans for which land will be retained as agriculture and which land will be going to development, and that is something that has to be done.
Okay.
It's got to be done. It's a difficult decision, and that difficult decision has to be made by somebody. So we are holding that. We have 50 years of heritage as an agricultural county, providing tea and coffee and other horticultural products, and we need to retain that. So in the development of housing, we need to do it in a planned way.
Sophie,
anybody who says anything else does not understand.
And do you have a timeline? There's an investor watching right now.
I said a couple of months.
A couple of months.
So by December. Yes.
Okay.
Is that what you mean by a couple of months? But that maybe it is subject to interpretation.
November and December is 2 months.
Yeah, that is what you should do, but not a couple of months. So if you look at it, imagine somebody who got a loan to build his house as an investor or as a citizen of Kiambu County. Right now they are suffering because they cannot access their plans. And it is very unfortunate because it is not all the areas that are agricultural in Kiambu. If you look at Thika, most of the areas are industrial. So building is supposed to be going on. Witaithia building is supposed to be going on. Ruiru building is supposed to be going on. If you're speaking about Radi and other regions, it could be a bit understandable by the change of user, but some already have the change of user and they are commercial, and their plans are not being approved by the county government of Kiambu.
So this is a blanket for the entire county in terms of just holding that.
It was absolutely necessary because the other processes that we are looking at, streamlining the way the approvals are taking place. There are a lot of activities that are not going properly, and it is our duty to make sure that as by the end of this period, all the processes are being carried with clarity and openness to ensure they are not.
So even for the areas that are not, as he's mentioning, the areas that are not necessarily agricultural, they are known for, they're not agricultural. Why not lift the ban or the stop?
There's no ban. We have said
it's been stopped. So why not lift that?
It's going to be done in 2 months.
In 2 months. All right. Finally, as we wind up, I just want your going forward for Kiambu County. What assurances? Of course, there are challenges, as there are with every county. Alcoholism is one, unemployment among the youth. What in terms of legislation, what in terms of the action you're thinking of taking to ensure that Kiambu County gets to where it needs to be in coming days are you taking?
In terms of agriculture, I know you talked about the 2% for coffee.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, coffee industry is very depressed at the moment. I'm working with Komodai farmers to ensure that they get back to their days of glory, where they're producing a lot of coffee. This has been brought about by excessive loans from their marketers. So we are going to reschedule some of these loans, ensure that farmers end up with money and they're able to then be able to grow the coffee industry. So we are working with the coffee industry. In terms of the milk industry, one of the things that we are addressing is the feed to animal feed. At the moment, animal feeds are very high cost.
Right.
So we'll be looking at reducing those by creating the necessary supporting structure and supporting facilities to reduce the cost of feeds.
Okay.
This will make the 1 shilling he's talking about feel like nothing, but that is why we need to be able to do that.
And finally, your closing statements also on the way forward for Kiambu.
My way forward for the people of Kiambu: 1, we must have a master plan that we develop so that we are able to establish where it is agricultural and where we can do our buildings.
Right.
2, we need to have value addition on our tea. If we can process that tea and sell it to other countries, we'll add value addition to that tea. 3, we need to calm down as the people of Kiambu, listen to each other, involve every stakeholders. People in Kiambu are learned, they have great ideas, they are willing to pay taxes, but taxes that are fair to them.
Okay, thank you both.
Finally, I'd like to say we have heard the people of Kiambu.
Yeah.
They've created some important things. They said some important things.
Yeah.
Our role is to give them service, and we want to make Kiambu the best place to live in, the best place to grow in, and the best place to work in.
All right. Gerald Githinji, Deputy Governor, Kiambu County. Patrick Chege, Member of the County Assembly representing Gitodho Ward in Kiambu County. Thank you both for talking to us this morning. I'm sure there's now more in terms of light shed in terms of this proposed law, and we'll see what happens in coming days. Thank you both.
Thank you
very much. Of course, just you've been following that discussion. You've had some of the issues, especially the County Assembly members have with it, is the lack of clarity in law in terms of whether if you're burying a person in your own land, whether you're also going to be charged this. But the Deputy Governor saying that is something that will be cleared out, and it's the role of the County Assembly members, he says, as they deliberate on this law, to be able to just fine-tune it to make sure that clarity is there. He maintains that those charges are for public land in that county. But of course, keep your comments coming. We're asking you, do you support the proposed burial fees in Kiambu County? Share your thoughts with us. You can tweet me directly at Sophia Wanuna, also at KTN Kenya. Remember, the hashtag to use is Morning Express KTN. And also you can SMS us 22155. It is now 7:33 a.m. I just want to bring us up to speed with some breaking news we are getting right now, that several people are feared dead after a train collides with a bus at Mutindwa on Outer Ring Road. The bus was full of passengers. It was heading to town, and rescue operations are currently underway. This is a story we are just receiving, news just in, and of course we'll keep you updated as and when we get more details. Again, to take you through news just coming into us right now is that there's been an accident. Several people are feared dead after a train collided with a bus at Mtindwa on Outer Ring Road. The bus, which was full of passengers, was headed to town. Of course, it's early morning, everybody making their way to places of work or different places. So the bus was full, and that was a collision there at Outer Ring Road. Rescue operations, we understand, are underway. Details we are going to be continuing to bring you throughout the show as and when we get them. It's time for your health. As you know, is the case every Tuesday, and children often have a significant level of ear, nose, throat, and upper respiratory problems, and because of their inability to vocalize, often the symptoms are neglected till they flare up into severe infections. While these are treated at the time, failure to address the underlying conditions may lead to persistent or even frequent recurrences of the problems. My child is having a flu all the time. My child needs to visit the doctor every other week. Maybe some of the common comments made by parents in the playgroup and at kindergarten stage. So this morning on Your Health, we are focusing on common ENT problems in children, and we're now joined live by Dr. Wahome Karanja, a consultant ENT and head and neck surgeon from our INM studios. Good morning, Daktari. Good morning.
Morning, Sophia. Morning, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Hello.
Very well, thank you, Sophia. Thank you for having me in the studio.
And thank you for coming in. I'll just start by asking you, one of the things, of course, I've just said as we're getting into the interview, is that the biggest challenge when it comes to problems of ENT with children is just that they will in most cases not be able to vocalize, not be able to communicate what they're feeling, the pain or the challenges they have to their parents. So how can a parent get to go by this, to handle this with their children? Because then at the end of the day, they get to find out what's happening when it's already at a very serious stage. So what can one do?
Okay, First of all, as an overview of the common conditions in children, and as you have rightfully said, with the inability of young, which means the infants, and people who are probably aged between 0 days and 3 years of age, is that you tend to not be able to vocalize. But most children, most parents are very perceptive and can be able to pick out subtle signs. For example, if a child is not startling when there's a loud noise, and that implies that maybe they're not hearing too well. And if they're screaming or crying and they are very hot or they're feverish, then that implies that they might be going down with an infection. And so fortunately, most ear, nose and throat conditions tend to have physical demonstrations. For example, a running nose, a cough, and so on.
All right, and I want us to take us through some of those common problems. We are talking about ear, nose and throat, and for a parent watching right now, very important to understand what are some of these common problems that we see and that you encounter as a doctor as well.
Okay, one of the commonest things you have obviously is a blocked nose and mouth breathing or snoring. And this usually happens in children who are, say, aged between the ages of 0 and 5 or 6 years. And blocked nostrils could imply that you are either suffering from allergies, or you might be having certain conditions like adenoid swellings. Adenoid tissues are tissues that are found behind the nose, and they respond to a normal growth in terms of immunity. But occasionally this growth can become abnormal in size, causing a significant obstruction. And most parents will say that, you know what, when my child is sleeping, they seem to be very uncomfortable, they're snoring very loudly, and they sound almost like an adult, and they look like they're getting tired, or their activity during the day is not so good. Then we need to investigate them further to rule out any development of upper ear obstruction, and the common one is adenoid swelling.
All right.
Another condition, of course, would be a running nose, and that's commonly caused by the common cold, which is a flu infection, and that can get complicated if not treated symptomatically. In other words, giving painkillers, giving plenty of fluids and rest, and if that gets complicated, then you could get something called sinusitis.
All right, and of course there's also the chronic cough, and in most times we'll see children are constantly coughing all the time. How, at least for this one, it's different. A parent will be able to quickly pick up on it, but also
Absolutely.
What causes this, the recurrence?
Chronic, first of all, would imply a cough that has been lasting, say, over two weeks. And therefore, it's not an acute condition. It's not an upper respiratory infection or a common cold that has disappeared with symptomatic treatment. And so what that would imply is that either you have an infection that is long-standing. In our setup, things like TB exist, especially with our experience with HIV and so on. But one other common cause is just allergies. And for us, what is most important, especially in the urban centers, is the upsurge in pollution, overcrowding, and the dust that we're experiencing because of road construction and otherwise. And therefore, it's good to manage the environments where the child is staying. For example, in the home, to be careful with the pets that you keep, to have surfaces properly cleaned, and so on. And that might be a very good management for those allergies that might be causing those chronic coughs.
Right, and let's go to sinuses. You also touched on that one, and we know that this, if not handled early, could even lead to surgery if things get out of control. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we all have sinuses, and it's interesting that occasionally you find a patient saying, you know what, doctor, I was told that I have sinuses, and you would laugh and say, okay, yes, so does everyone else do. But when those sinuses, which are air-filled spaces around the skull, get infected, that is what is called sinusitis. And in children, again, because they are not able to vocalize, some of the subtle signs will be that they are complaining, they are probably irritable, they have fever, they might have halitosis, which means a bad smell coming from the nose or the throat, and a running nose. And it would be different from the running nose of allergy, which would be clear. In sinusitis, you'd have a thick, what you call purulent discharge. And like you rightfully said, if sinusitis is not treated early, then it can get complicated and require surgery, which is called endoscopic sinus surgery.
Right,
And the treatment for sinusitis commonly is a long course of antibiotics, and by long I mean about 10 days or so. And nasal sprays, which are steroids that reduce inflammation and therefore help the airways to clear up, and therefore to aerate the sinuses that have become clogged with those secretions or that pass within the nose.
Right, Dr. Ari, and you mentioned something about snoring, and sometimes parents will hear their children snoring and just say something like labda huyu ni kama tu baba yake, but really it's something that they should seek attention for.
Absolutely, and one of the things to look out for is like you've rightfully said, and men as a suspect, that you might be having snoring and you might be called a heroic snorer. But in children, the subtle sign to look for is if the snoring is also accompanied by a very disturbed sleep, and if you are having spells of where you stop breathing, what you call apneic attacks. And that implies that you're getting significant upper airway obstruction that is causing those periods of apnea. And that is dangerous because that might lead to overworking of your heart, and it might even lead eventually to heart disease and so on, and also poor development of facial features, and that requires attention by an ENT.
Right, and to go to the ear part of the ENT, when you're talking about ear aches, what are some of also those symptoms that one can look out for? Because especially for the infants, and in most cases, a child will just be crying and you don't know what's going on. What to look out for? What are the symptoms?
One of the things that happens in ear disease, what you call otitis or otitis media, is fever. And children are very susceptible to ear disease because they have what you call the eustachian tube. If you hold your nose and blow some air, you might feel a popping sound, and that is because that you've pushed air through the eustachian tube to the ear. But in children, this tends to be wide, it tends to be short, and therefore they can easily have an infection within the throat going into the ear. And their symptoms usually would be irritability, they might be vomiting, they could be disinterested in feeding, and when you look at them, or when you have them seen by a doctor and he looks into the ears, you'd see an obvious redness within the ear. The important thing about fevers that are very high and not responding to some treatment is actually to have an early dose of an antibiotic prescribed, of course, by the doctor. And that would prevent a complication of chronic ear disease, where you have children who are draining pus occasionally from the ear, and this results from an acute ear infection that has complicated to rupture or to open out the eardrum.
And of course, an important one also, Dr. as we're talking about the ears, is to how to go about the cleaning. Most of the times we use the earbuds, even for the adults. Is that the way to go about cleaning our ears?
Absolutely not. Thank you for asking that, Sophia. The way the ears have been designed is you have small hairs within what is called the outer canal of the ear, and you have glands that produce wax, which is what people clean out, and when you put in your cotton bud, you can see either a brown or something discoloration. But the skin of the ear canal is consistently coming outwards or shedding. And therefore, we have an inbuilt system. The wax serves a purpose of being protective by preventing infection. So the process of putting in an earbud, one, is pushing back wax into the ear, which is attempting to come out, and two, might cause a bit of trauma to that skin and therefore predispose you to an infection of that outer canal, and you can get otitis or external ear infection because of that. So the advice is, especially in children, do not stick cotton buds in the ear. Instead, just wash around the places where your finger would reach with the face towel or so on.
All right, Dr. Ari, I just want to pause there for a second and bring our viewers up to speed with some breaking news. We've been scrolling that on your screen, that there's been an accident, and I just want to bring you up to speed with the details we're getting right now. Several people feared dead. We understand 3 are now confirmed dead after a train collided with a bus at Mtindwa on Outer Ring Road. The bus was full of passengers heading to town, as of course would be the obvious case. It's early morning, and as people are making their way into the various places of work, wherever it is they're going to. So busy hours, rush hour, if you may call it that. So we're continuing to watch this story for you. We're bringing you the details as and when we get them. But right now we understand 3 people are confirmed dead, and rescue operations are ongoing on site, and we'll continue to update you on that. Daktari, I want to continue with you also. You were talking about the cleaning and that it's good and important not to use those earbuds because then they push the works further. But there are those also who just have consistently keep having their ears blocking, and there's too much wax despite even going perhaps to have that syringing process that removes the works. What could be the problem in that particular case?
Absolutely. There are those who have a malfunctioning of that normal system and who would naturally be overproducing that wax. And in this case, then we require to go in ourselves and do the syringing. But by and large, for the majority of people, you'd be having a normal cleaning mechanism of the ear.
All right. Daktari, and also you said something about that if a child has delay in or inaccurate speech, there needs to be a checkup very quickly because in terms of the hearing, that should be assessed because there could be a problem there as well.
Absolutely. Hearing loss is another common problem that the children experience or may not be picked early enough. And in the younger children who are not able to vocalize, the subtle signs would be that, you know what, the child is not developing speech, and when you call them or when you startle, they do not turn, say, in response to sound. And in the older children, say, who are going to school, the teachers might complain that, you know what, this child does not seem to be understanding or picking up in class. And this child may be branded as being slow to learn, and yet they are not able to communicate or to experience sound. And there's a very small window between 0 and 5 years of children. They require to hear sound so that they can be able to phonate or to be able to reproduce that sound. And if beyond the age of 5 they've not done that, then that becomes very difficult, and therefore, of course, it would lead to problems in adaptation to normal life and to learning and to growing and to even self-esteem. And therefore, when these subtle signs are picked up, then hearing tests need to be done so that corrective measures are taken, including amplification, which means hearing aids, and occasionally even surgery.
All right, Daktari, you've talked about the ears, you've talked about the nose, a bit about the tongue. What are some of those infections and how to treat them?
One of the few infections that you might get in the tongue is oral candidiasis or thrush that young infants tend to get, and it's usually fairly straightforward to treat by giving some antifungal treatment. You may have some congenital malformations within the tongue or within the mouth that sometimes may be corrected through surgery and are obvious, but when they occur, they give problems with feeding. So the mom might be saying that, you know what, my child is not breastfeeding properly. And another common thing that happens in children in ENT is actually foreign bodies, because children like to experiment with objects. And just as a warning to parents, it is important when we are choosing the toys that we're giving our children or in the home environment where they're playing with objects to be careful not to have small objects, because children tend to stick these in the ears, in the nose. In girls, especially when you're braiding their hair and you put beads, they tend to put those in their nose a lot. So it's good to be really careful about this, because those can lead to infections. They can get inhaled or they can get swallowed and block either the airway or the food airway. And so it's important to have those far away from children.
All right. Finally, Daktari, I wanted to talk about a bit of the cleft or the palate. And we've heard of people removing those. Does that happen? And in what circumstances?
A cleft palate, normal development is two-sided. And so you have what are called the palatine shells coming to join together to form what are the facial structures. Now, if you have a problem or an interruption of that process of union, then you develop a cleft palate. So it means then you have a cleft within the mouth on what is called the palate, and it can even extend to the front, which is what you call a cleft lip. So the problem with that is that one, it is unsightly, and two, if you have a cleft palate, it has you have a problem with feeding and even phonation, because you might be aspirating food into your nose, you might be producing abnormal speech. But the treatment is actually not removal, it is surgery and corrective surgery for that.
All right. Finally, Dr. I'll just ask for your words of advice for any parent who's watching right now, ear, nose, throat, just some of those infections and diseases. What your key advice would be for a parent with a child?
My key advice would be to look out for those symptoms: fever, irritability, refusal to feed. The commonest infections that affect children are upper respiratory infections, and therefore it's good to seek advice early. It is good to stop and avoid getting over-the-counter medications. So go to your local dispensary or your health center and so on, and majority of healthcare providers are empowered to diagnose these problems and be able to treat and even give the appropriate referrals, say, to the ear, nose and throat surgeons.
All right.
And again, to be very vigilant about foreign objects and toys that the children are with, and to keep the home environment very clean because of allergies, which are a frequent cause of the complication of asthma.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Wahome Karanja, consultant ENT, head and neck surgeon, for being part of our show this morning on your health segment and talking to us through some of those common problems among children when it comes to ear, nose and throat. We appreciate your time and thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Sophia.
All right, have a great day. It's 7:53 a.m. We want to recap just breaking news. It has been scrolling on your screen this morning, and it's details that we're getting right now that the Kenya Red Cross is saying that 6 people are confirmed dead in that accident that we've been telling you. Several people are feared dead. Now we're getting that number at 6 after a train collided with a bus at Mtindo on Outer Ring Road, and the bus was full of passengers heading to town. Those rescue operations are ongoing right now. The Red Cross, as I've mentioned, there is on site, and we'll continue to get updates from them and of course bring them to you. But that is the situation. Of course, it's early morning, so you can expect those quite a number of people in those the bus traveling in the train as well. But 6 people right now have been removed from that wreckage. They have been confirmed dead, and I'm just checking to see if there are any further updates from the Kenya Red Cross, but they say as of now 6 people are confirmed dead, and we'll continue to bring you updates. So keep it right here, KTN Morning Express. We're taking a short break now, and we are not taking that break. We will first get to know our country. Very important that we do that.